You guys know, I've been talking about an Arthas Menethil-based Netflix series or movie series or whatever for quite a while. I just think the story of Arthas Menethil is a story that can be told to people who don't play WoW, and they'll understand it, right? The hero who goes too far trying to achieve a good goal turns evil. You know, it's a classic trope. Darth Vader is one of the ones that comes to mind, of course. So we've heard these stories before. The Arthas Menethil story is a story a lot of people could get into. Blizzard, evidently, is in talks with Netflix. This is real, guys. It's not some fucking leaked weird shit for a 2026 Warcraft Netflix series. Let's see what this is all about.
So it looks like everything we've been talking about, speculating, animating with AI, may finally be happening for real, and even as early as September next year. Looks like the Netflix adaptation of Warcraft is finally going to be coming. I know we've been talking about this for ages. You must have seen a new supposed leak of animated Warcraft popping up pretty much every few weeks these past few years. Some forum posts, but we got about as official information as we can get. Not an official website.
Now, if Netflix actually did this, how would you guys want to see it? Like, would you want to see it in an animated format, maybe in like an arcane format? I mean, me personally, I would love to see it in like a Game of Thrones-esque format. If they really go full in on the Arthas Scourge story, culling a strat, I would love to see a live action, personally. But I understand some people love the animated format. You could do more with it, maybe. But I mean, it just give me that live action, story of Arthas Menethil. Oh my God! Like if he's walking back into Lordaeron, the rose petals falling, and he succeeds, does the whole succeeding you moment, live action. I don't know if I'd be able to contain myself. Yeah, live action. If it comes to a cartoon, I won't watch. Yet no more live action. I know some people like animation, and there are benefits to animation. You can do more with it. You're less tied down to, say, certain actors or whatever, tropes and things like that. So I think either way I'd watch it, but I just prefer a live action.
But we've learned that Netflix is working on a project for a popular Blizzard game that will be announced on the next year's BlizzCon. We've even gotten some insider information that
Also, I'm talking about this in terms of World of Warcraft. This could also be like a StarCraft series or something. Nobody is 100% sure yet as to what this will be. But the talks are, that is happening.
Blizzard originally signed a deal with Netflix for 3 massive Blizzard projects back in 2020, but that ended up being a disaster for legal reasons. So, what is everything we currently know, and what will this series be like? Are we looking at an animated series or actual live
or
action
Diablo?
stuff?
Could be Diablo too.
If you haven't seen it yet, I've been running a raid channel for quite a few months called Doran's Arena, and I'd really appreciate you guys checking it out. And also, if you haven't played the game yet, this is literally the best time to start.
Check out his new channel.
Everyone a free legend.
Yeah, a StarCraft series would be really cool. It would be. I would watch that too. I just hope it'd be fully gored out, like all the way violent. That's what I would need out of it.
Until the 5th of May, where you can get Ludek's outro by just logging in daily, and there is even a final reward, a relic that the community can vote on. Patriot codes are going completely crazy right now, so all new players can only pick one of these. So Supreme 6 for Supreme Gallic, Monkey King for Sun Wukong, or Get Alice for Alice.
I don't, but I know I would like it.
All players can also use the code GameLeap for additional stuff, and that is all on top of the stuff you will get when you download the game with my link in the description. Also, if you guys are in need of a clan, I'm currently running one, the Arena Syndicate, and we still got a few more spots left. So just click my link in the description or scan the QR code you can see on the screen, and you will get an awesome package worth $60. You will get Zargala as soon as you complete the tutorial. You will get Ugo at level 15, and you can even use one of the codes that I previously mentioned. So for all new players, then another one on top of that called GameLeap, and all you gotta do is just log in for 25 days for yet another legendary. So check out my link in the description below and check out my second channel, Doran's Arena.
So realistically, news like these have been coming out pretty much every few months now. If you guys have followed any sort of YouTube or news platform, it does seem like every 2 months there is a leak or some insider information project where WoW is either getting a live action or an animated series, but looks like this time it is happening for real. Now, it turns out those other times were not actually lies. There were some legit rumors and insider information. It turns out Blizzard has actually been trying to tackle this animated series in a big way for years, not just dip their
I think the good thing about Arcane is it's so hyper successful. There is no way that it hasn't caught the eye of Blizzard. Blizzard has very good IPs. They do. Some IPs that stretch far beyond gaming. People who know a lot about the Warcraft storylines and everything never played World of Warcraft. And it's because it's a very good IP. So, like, seeing how much money Arcane has made for Riot, seeing how much it's built up anticipation for their own games, their own MMO. There's no way Blizzard isn't trying to jump in on this, and they have such good stories ready to be told in another format. It's just a matter of execution. And, I mean, we all know that a story of Arthas Menethil, I've harped on it many times, would be a very easy one to tell. You got your, the rise of the prince and everything else, culling a Strathome, ending season 1. Bam, they go to Northrend for season 2. Season 3, full on, Ice Crown Citadel. He's the Lich King. All that. It'd be so easy to split it into those seasons and tell those stories over time. It's just a matter of, will they go through with it?
Those in the water to test it out.
And is Netflix the right company to do it? Oh, that's another thing.
Work, but we've actually learned that they had 3 total projects planned with Netflix originally, but that actually went sour. All of this brings us to today. Now, none of this is actually out of the blue. If you guys could be following the recent news from the past year or two, there was a ton of foreshadowing. First of all, Chris Metz's return told us we can expect a lot more coming to not just World of Warcraft, but Warcraft as a franchise. And then we got a lead Blizzard dev some year ago talking about how they're legit planning a new Warcraft movie if they can find the right studio to do it at the right time, and they want to kind of do it right this time again. Then a few months back, Blizzard has announced that BlizzCon is coming in September.
It does depend if they get real fans involved. You're right. I would hope that Metzen is involved in whatever project they decide to do, because he would be kind of the overseer of the lore, making sure that it's accurate and it stays true to the game, rather than changing everything up the way they maybe did with The Witcher. We saw that completely go south. The further they got the further they got away from The Witcher, true lore, the worse it got. The worse it got, and people just stopped watching it. So you got to remain true to the fans. You got to understand your fan base for sure. Henry Cavill, obviously the key. He would be a great one to play Arthas Menethil. Getting the right actors in place would be very important too if they had actually went through with this. And Henry Cavill's awesome, not just because he fucking looks like Arthas Menethil, but damn, he's played the games. This guy loves the games. So he would make sure too that this shit remains true to the lore.
For 2026, which obviously means they got big news planned, and based on the timeline, it seems very likely that The Last Titan, so the final installment of the World Soul Saga, could also be announced then as well. So the actual news, while it isn't exactly the official Blizzard post, it also isn't some forum leak. It's actually really as close to official as we can get right now, as it is from 2 weeks back.
What a great story, Jay.
Podcast for Xbox. And keep in mind, Blizzard is now part of Microsoft, so all of this is super related. A journalist discusses the success of the recent Minecraft movie, how, while they can't...
That's another good point that Doran's actually making. Microsoft's purchase of Blizzard, right? What'd they pay all this money for? They paid the money for the IP. So you best believe after paying, what was it, $64 billion or something like that, they're going to want to milk it, And part of milking the IP that they just bought is certainly putting it out there in another format, right? Not just making more games off of it, but making a show, making a movie, maybe other stuff like that. So Microsoft's purchase, of Blizzard to me does indicate that, this stuff's is going to get pushed on even harder than it was before.
Say all the details right now and everything. He says that Netflix is currently working on a joint project with Blizzard to make an adaptation of a popular Blizzard game, and he won't say which game. However, it was said that the project will be revealed on BlizzCon 2026 in September next year, which explains why they decided to announce the BlizzCon so early, nearly 2 years before the actual event. You might remember that little trailer we had seen a few months back with the suspicious northern vibes to the entire Blizzard logo. Even more interestingly, just so you can see that this is...
That maybe they're hinting at it already. I think the Guardian story would be good instead, talking about demonic... Look, here's the thing. I think if you go... J-Ball, I'm not saying that's not a good story and that's something they could come back to, but I think if you go too high fantasy, too magical off the bat, you could lose people. Like, I feel like Game of Thrones really got more magical and whimsical and all this shit. Like, as it advanced, it really started as just like it's like a medieval trope. Like, well, okay, we're in some fantasy medieval world where, okay, maybe there's some dragons, but for the most part, it's swords and shields to start out. And then it got more and more fantasy as it went on, once you pulled people in. I feel like that's the best way to do it, is to kind of keep your feet grounded at first and then pull the magic shit in later. I feel like when you start crazy magical, like if Star Wars started by talking about metachlorians and the Force and shit like off the bat, it would get kind of weird, and you'd lose a lot of people who would be willing to accept that later on. But at first, you kind of want to start with as much grounding in a normal world as possible, and then introduce people to magic and demons and weird shit like that.
is legit, he talks about how this
Which is why, again, I like the Arthur
happened
story.
back in 2020,
It's grounded.
but another project ended up failing, and now they're picking up the pieces. So apparently, originally 5 years ago, Blizzard started serious talks with Netflix where they had 3 actual large projects planned, with them very likely involving Overwatch, StarCraft, Diablo, and Warcraft potentially, but this ended up being a legal nightmare as apparently Netflix had poached an executive from Blizzard, so Blizzard ended in a lawsuit. This ended up nowhere. It was a complete dead end. This is actually kind of consistent
Right.
with the disaster Blizzard was at this point in time.
Yeah, if you don't know this story, Netflix was already in talks with Blizzard before, right? And Bobby Kotick was the leader at that time. And then Netflix poached one of Blizzard's top guys. Okay, they straight up poached him. I mean, all Bobby had to do was probably pay the guy more money, and he would have stayed. But Netflix offered him a price that he couldn't refuse, so he left. I don't blame the guy. But Bobby got pissed off by this. So pissed off, in fact, that he made sure the entire deal fell apart. One thing Bobby Kotick had was a fucking massive ego. So you cross him, he doesn't give a shit if it's bad for the franchise or not. He's going to X you out. So that ended up collapsing the entire conversation there. But now, Bobby gone. Bobby's got his boat, right? He needed a boat. He's got his new boat. He's out sailing now, and now we got in different leadership. So hopefully these conversations go further this time around.
As they seem to have burned quite a lot of bridges at this point in time. I mean, this is also when WoW was completely turned off in China and a whole bunch of other controversies were going on at the same time. Big time. However, now it is a completely different climate, and it looks like they're legit picking everything back up, especially with the completely new management. So in the interview, they discussed the a bit unexpected mainstream success of Minecraft and Fallout turning into screen projects, and how Blizzard is realizing they want to be on this as well. Now, the only little news we know is that Netflix is working on a series based on a popular Blizzard game. Realistically, all Blizzard games are popular, and the most people are thinking this might be Overwatch due to the more mainstream popularity with the younger audience.
I mean, really, would you do a Overwatch series? When Marvel Rivals is literally tearing you a new butthole, you're going to jump in and do an Overwatch series? I don't know if that's the best choice. I'm not saying Overwatch doesn't have good stories. I think they do, and it'd be a cool world to explore. But I think if you're going to do a first Netflix series, you're like a first pairing, okay, here we go, Blizzard and Netflix working together, you probably want to lead with one of your stronger IPs.
People are saying Diablo and StarCraft, but honestly, World of Warcraft is still the main project Blizzard is working on. They even admitted this themselves, that it is the most successful project they're currently running. And let's be real, Warcraft is incredibly popular as well, super developed when it comes to the story. It might not be super appealing to a very young audience today, but it has a gigantic fan base nonetheless. Even the Warcraft movie that is generally considered a failure or just breaking even, actually did pretty well. I mean, a lot of people had seen it.
It got carried by the fan
keep in
base,
mind,
for sure.
10 years ago was a completely different climate for video game screen adaptations and how successful they can actually be. Now, we can actually kind of combine this with a few other hints that had happened recently in the past year or two with the Microsoft acquisition.
See, like, I'd be okay with a series like this, right? Made in this art format where it's like, okay, computer rendered, but it's hyper realistic. This would be cool. The only thing is, I think this is like really hard to do. Like, I know these cinematics at this level of detail take like freaking years to get done. So I don't know how long a whole episodic series would take if you did it this way. But man, this would be a cool way to see WoW on the big screen. Yeah, the budget. Yeah, this would blow the budget out of the water. I think live action would certainly be cheaper than this.
And the full return of Chris Metzen, it was obvious that World of Warcraft really is coming back big time. They obviously invested a ton of resources into this World Soul saga. They're very clearly hinted they got like the next 20 years planned for the series. So
Screw you,
WoW
Sam's
is
bald
back
spot.
again in the spotlight. Then when Chris Metzen returned, he said that very exciting times are ahead for the entire franchise, not just World of Warcraft. This is probably related to Warcraft 3, but also almost certainly to this Netflix series. I mean, they have been dabbling with this animated movie thing, like screen adaptation, for 15 years, really, and they almost fully committed 5 years ago to 3 large projects, so obviously this was in the talks even a few years back. Another thing that I've covered already is the promotional material that you might have seen was really a hint that they did for The War Within, which at the time I did say was an experiment. For quite a while, Blizzard has been doing this lore promo series before the expansion is released with a few animated shorts, but for the first time ever, they went with this really new art style for Illyria, the Illyria video, and I really think this was a quick test to see how it vibes with the audience, this specific art style that we had never seen before. Despite The War Within being a theme, they spent...
I thought this was cool. It was a cool art style. I would watch a Netflix series done like this. My voice is gone. But I'd rather see it live action. than this.
A lot of resources showing orcs versus humans part of Warcraft in the original game, and I would say it was a very successful test. I mean, check out the fact that the Threads of Destiny, the Nerubian cinematic, didn't even break 1 million views, but the Illyria Light and Shadow got nearly 8 million views, being incredibly popular and very successful.
Yeah, but that has more to do with the story that was being told than the art style, for sure. Like, this is way cooler. The troll wars with the freaking high elves was a way cooler storyline than a crying spider princess about how mommy doesn't know how to run the empire. And she's completely getting fucking duped, it's obvious, but yeah, this story is way cooler, which is why people clicked
As I said, this animated series with Netflix has really been in the background for a while. They probably had a rough idea what they wanted to do, so they figured out to test a few different things, few different art styles, and to
I
see
would
how
watch
the
it no matter
audience
what,
responds.
yes.
If it really was a test for the animated series, then a similar animated style, just like the Lydia video, could actually be coming. But the real question is, what could the adaptation actually be about? As, keep in mind, Warcraft universe is incredibly gigantic. Now, despite the fact that it is Netflix, so honestly I wouldn't be surprised if they just adapted the Dragonflight storyline as like the pinnacle of Warcraft. Realistically, the older parts, the foundation of World of Warcraft would really work best. Probably not orcs versus humans, as they tried to do that with the Warcraft movie. It didn't really work that well, but starting somewhere with the Second War would actually be a good idea. Think of it something like the attack on Quel'Thalas, the Human Kingdoms, orcs already being established, trolls, and ultimately the orcs being sent into determinant camps and then troll freeing them. All of this pre-Third War could actually turn out to be an excellent adaptation that a lot of mainstream audience, possibly not familiar with World of Warcraft, could totally...
That's a good story to tell, the Third War or whatever, and everything that happened with Thrall freeing the orcs. I think it's Second War, actually. No, that'd be the First War. Right, the First War, orcs come through the portal, fight the humans. Second War, after Thrall frees them, all that shit. So, I mean, those stories are good to tell. But I still think an Arthas Menethil human-based story would be the easiest one for people outside of the WoW audience to understand.
Vibe with. However, the Third War is also very likely candidate with the entire Scourge, art and storyline, the fallen human kingdom, the prince, the king, the orcs finding their place in the world, the establishment of the Horde on Kalimdor, the invasion of the Burning Legion. All of this
you can go
could
back
fit
and tell these
perfectly
stories.
as well. Further than this, I really don't think they will do World of Warcraft stuff like Cataclysm or Legion just yet. Honestly, seeing that they never really did something like this other than the Warcraft movie, I think the Second War is the perfect place to start. It is relatable enough for the audience not familiar with the game, but it also gives them a lot of room to continue on the series if it actually becomes popular, because they got like 10 possible sequels to go from. The only part to think about is whether this would be an actual movie type series or an animated or CGI series, and personally I think it is very likely going to be animated at this moment, as the Warcraft movie was insanely expensive at the time, and I'm not sure if they're willing to take such a gigantic risk once again. And let's be real, a lot of the WoW lore is really hard to put into live action without looking very tacky and like a generic fantasy film, so something is definitely coming.
Maybe.
I mean, World of Warcraft hasn't been 100% confirmed, a Blizzard project has been confirmed, but we know that objectively WoW is the most likely candidate, the most popular series that Blizzard is currently running. I'm guessing we're going to get hints
guys, his second language is English. I mean, to be fair, he probably speaks more languages than all of us combined, so we'll give him a break on the series for serious
now and then what could be going on and what this series could be like. But we are going to get a big announcement next year in September, very likely together with the last Titan. I don't necessarily think that the series will be related to the World Soul Saga, as I think the main goal of it would be to just get people interested in Warcraft in general, so that they could get funneled into the World Soul Saga
CGI could happen, Zolshi, it'd just be very expensive, that's the problem.
But it does appear that exciting times are ahead. Thanks for watching. Check out whether the Dark Heart is really a different version of the Heart of Azeroth by clicking on the screen, and subscribe to my raid channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Alright, nice video from Dord. Yeah, overall excited for a Netflix series if it does actually come to fruition this time around without Bobby interfering with his ego. I think it could be a really good thing for the game and a really good thing for our eyes to see, because I would love to see these stories told.